It's Bucket. AllThemods 10 was recently hit with a huge update. How are we ever going to keep up with all the new cool shiny things? Well, good thing I've got you covered. Specifically, in today's video, I'm going to be covering the new Create mod add-ons that have been added to the 2.47 update in AllThemods 10. First add-on we're going to look at is Create Rechiseled, and with this, they bring us the mechanical chisel block. This works very similarly to the mechanical saw. If you're using belts, you're going to need to apply a rotation to the mechanical chisel going in the opposite direction. As per the mod description, this mod introduces more options to decorative blocks in Create and essentially functions as an automated chisel. Without a filter, blocks going through will have a random chisel pattern applied. Of course, we can use the filter if we want a specific block pattern. But the real question is, does the mechanical chisel work with blocks from other mods? Yes. Oh my god, finally we have a way to automate chisels in AllThemods 10. Well, almost. Upon further testing, it looks like the mechanical chisel works with blocks from Chipped and Rechiseled, but not from the chisel mod, which for some reason shows up in your inventory as Chiseled, but Chiseled Reborn in JEI. We now have sophisticated storage and backpack Create integration, which means you can now use your sophisticated storage and backpacks in your Create contraptions. Create Crafts and Additions brings us FE compatibility with Create. First, I want to bring attention to the digital adapter, which is a computer craft peripheral, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the most knowledgeable on, but this should allow computer craft computers to interface with various things from the Create mod. So the biggest thing with FE integration means we now have a much easier way to generate rotational power, which comes in the form of the electric motor. Incredibly straightforward. Apply power, you can also then adjust the speed and the direction, and that's it, it's plug and play. We're also given the alternator as well, which does the exact opposite. Apply rotational power and it will convert that to forge energy. However, it'll do this at 75% efficiency, but this is by no means a game-breaking way of generating energy, with maximum throughput being 360 FE per tick. Of course, with energy integration means we need to make wires. And to do that, we have the rolling mill. The rolling mill is capable of crafting wires from both Create as well as immersive engineering. In addition, it can craft rods and a straw, which that we're going to get to later. How do these fare compared to other recipes in the pack? I'd say they're pretty average, but the rolling mill isn't particularly fast. So I would consider this just to be an alternative way to craft these items. Of course, we have our own Create wires as well. Our wires, we essentially have a faster wire and a slower wire. In the middle, these connectors and festive lights would be the same as the slower wire. However, these are pretty cheap to make and are fairly space efficient considering the wires don't count as blocks. So, also considering that wires can be a little bit out of the way to get in the early game, this could be a potential option. Just to give a direct comparison as well, the lower wire has a transfer rate of 1 kFE per tick, and the faster wire 5 kFE per tick. In comparison, the first two tiers of mechanism cables can run at 3.2 kFE per tick and 51.2 kFE per tick. The accumulator is the energy storage multi-block, which can be a maximum of 3x3x5. At this size, the accumulator holds 90 million FE. Now this is actually pretty crazy considering how cheap this is to make. 90 million FE is comparable to Mechanism's ultimate energy cube. This add-on also has the Diamond Grit Sandpaper, which is a very durable sandpaper alternative. After some testing, this one can last up to 1024 polishes, compared to the regular sandpaper which can only do 8 polishes before breaking. The straw. If we give a blaze burner the straw, that's going to allow it to accept fluids as fuel, meaning we can just pipe lava straight in. But we've also got the option of biofuel. So your blaze burner would need a straw to use it. Biofuel will instead superheat your blaze burner. So this can be used as an alternative to blaze cakes. The recipe for biofuel though is a little bit out of the way. However, we can actually use biofuel from industrial foregoing as an alternative. Crafting this just requires throwing greenery into a bioreactor. And that's it. A much simpler and very cheap process. So then, for example, if you wanted to use steam engines, your setup could look something like this. Create Dragons Plus brings us new encased fan recipes in the form of bulk freezing and bulk coloring. Bulk freezing uses a powder snow bucket, which can turn ice into packed ice and eventually blue ice, but most notably it can turn blaze rods into breeze rods. Bulk coloring introduces liquid dyes. You can make these by using a mixer to mix dyes with water. With bulk coloring, we can essentially use 1 bucket of liquid dye to apply color to dyeable blocks and items. Some of these more useful ones include concrete, glass, applied energistics fluix cables, and refined storage blocks. To make it easier to access your fluids in your tank, there's also a fluid hatch. You can interact with this fluid hatch with your bucket to either fill it or empty it. This seems to work with fluid tanks as well, but unfortunately, it seems as though these were specifically made for buckets, as you'll only be able to fill your tank to a maximum of 1 bucket. Create Enchanting Industry brings enchanting to Create. First thing we're going to look at is the mechanical grindstone. This is formed with an item drain and 2 mechanical grindstones. The item drain part is similar to a hose pulley. There's one side for rotational force and the other side to pipe out fluids. The grindstone has a few functions. The grindstone can work as a substitute for sandpaper. For example, we can use this to polish rose quartz. Other than that, the grindstone functions primarily as a way to get liquid XP. Just like a vanilla grindstone, it can grind enchantments off of gear, salvaging a little bit of liquid experience in the process. It can also grind down sources of experience into liquid. This time, it can crush experience gems from an Ars Drigme farm and experience nuggets. Experience nuggets come from processing ores and crushing wheels. But with this add-on, experience nuggets will also drop from deployers killing mobs. So this means Create has its own liquid experience. Other than the ways I've mentioned, you can also use an item drain to drain bottles of enchanting, but also experience droplets from mystical agriculture. Although unfortunately, all of these methods seem to give very little liquid experience, which is why for liquid experience, I would recommend using the experience hatch. This is made by using a block of experience on a fluid hatch. Interacting with this will convert as much of your player experience into liquid experience. The experience hatch is also not limited to just Create tanks. From what I tested, experience hatch works on fluid drawers as well as applied energistics interfaces. Experience lanterns collect experience orbs and will also extract levels from a player, converting them into liquid experience. It has a very small internal buffer, but ideally you would pipe this into some kind of fluid storage. Unfortunately, it absorbs experience very slowly and only has a range of 1 block. The printer is exactly what it sounds like. It can print a copy of a variety of things, including books and filters, by using liquid black dye. With liquid experience, it can make copies of enchanted books. You can actually use other forms of liquid experience to print enchanted books, but the cost is dramatically higher, so I would highly recommend using Create's liquid experience. The printer is limited by how much liquid experience it can hold, and so it will be restricted by the cost of the enchanted book. To print, we need to have the right liquid in our printer. Set the filter with what we want to print, and in this example, we just need to place a book under our printer. In terms of all the mods 10 progression, the printer is actually quite relevant. Towards the end game, there are a few enchanted books you'll need to produce copies of. Normally, the only way to automate these would be to use the endgame multi-block structure, the runic enchanter, or get lucky on some villager trades. However, now we can use the printer as a much easier alternative. This is also something that could be very helpful in the early game. For example, here's a very simple setup that you can do with an experience hatch on our printer for an easy way to fill our printer up with liquid experience. With an Ender IO enchanter, we can craft a fortune enchant, print a copy, combine the copies, and then continuing to print until we have fortune 8. The blaze burners can be upgraded with the blaze upgrade smithing template. These can be found in loot chests in nether fortresses and bastions. With this, we can upgrade a blaze burner to either a blaze enchanter or a blaze forger. These will both take liquid experience to function, and also has a seething mode, which happens when you feed it cake of enchanting. These cakes have a similar recipe to blaze cakes, but we'll be pouring liquid experience into the cake base. These blaze burners won't accept liquid XP from other mods. In addition, fluids can only be piped in from the bottom. Items cannot be piped in at all. Just like with regular blaze burners, you'd have to instead use deployers or mechanical arms. Using these burners in seething mode will cause lightning to strike. Having no lightning rod will cause your game to crash, as well as destroying your blaze burner. These lightning strikes are also needed to convert blocks of experience into blocks of super experience. In a mechanical press, blocks of experience are needed to craft enchanting templates, and similarly, blocks of super experience are needed to craft super enchanting templates. Do note that if you wanted to force lightning strikes, you can force lightning strikes using charged snowballs, rending gale, or the lightning bolt spell from Iron Spells. However, it seems like Ars doesn't work. Both of these will be restricted by liquid experience cost, as they can only hold a maximum of 4 buckets. The Blaze Enchanter is similar to an automatable enchanting table. In the default mode, you can set the enchanting level up to level 30. Without a filter, it will enchant items like a regular enchanting table. By putting a specific item in the filter, you'll need an enchanting template. The Blaze Enchanter will then enchant the template with enchantments that are applicable to the item in the filter. On top of that, items that are put into the filter that are made of better materials will give better enchantments. Just to give you an idea, I enchant a few templates with different pickaxes, and this is what I got. With Seething mode, the level cap can be increased to level 60. Treasure enchantments are also possible. And with filtered enchanting, super enchanting templates will instead need to be used. The Blaze Forger is similar to an automatable anvil. Unfortunately, with level caps, on the default mode, the Blaze Forger will apply enchantments similar to the maximum vanilla enchantment levels. The Blaze Forger is used to apply enchanting templates to gear. To do this, you have to put the gear in first and the template second. In Seething mode, you can apply super enchanting templates. In this mode, you can go with the vanilla cap by 1. That being said, I have found that you can also do this in default mode. Seething mode will also allow you to apply conflicting enchantments. Overall in this pack, I don't think these blazes are going to be particularly useful, especially because of the level caps. To give you an idea, Super Enchanting is capped at level 60, whereas Apothic Enchanting, when fully set up, is capped at level 100. Ars Technica is a mod that complements both Ars Nouveau as well as Create. Ars Technica brings us source motors, very similar to the electric motors we looked at earlier, except of course, these motors run on source. They will automatically extract source from nearby source jars. Just keep in mind that if you intend on keeping these running at the highest RPM, they can be very source hungry. The Runic Spanner is an upgraded version of the Create wrench. With this, we have a wrench that works with various Ars blocks. For example, with this, we can easily rotate and break turrets and pedestals. The Technomancer armor set most notably can increase the speed of schematic cannons. In addition, the headpiece will also act as a set of engineer's goggles. We're also given the Focus of Transmutation, which is a spell focus that will improve the various glyphs from this add-on. And yes, the glyphs. These are designed around the idea of processing using R spells, but most notably turns key unique create mechanics into spells. We have a polish glyph which can polish rose quartz, and even a superheat glyph to mimic superheated blaze burners. Let's take a look at these create machine spells. The press glyph, which is essentially the mechanical press. The fuse glyph. This is your mechanical mixer. You can augment it with a smelt glyph for heated mixing or a superheat glyph for superheated mixing. Do note that this only works for most mixing crafts and won't work for shapeless crafting or brewing. The whirl glyph. This mimics encased fan mechanics. And yes, you can also augment this to mimic washing, smoking, blasting, and haunting. Also, the Obliterate glyph summons a giant hammer, but this is the Crushing Wheel spell. Much like the Crushing Wheel, it can also deal damage to entities by default. But Bucket, these spells look cool and all, but are they even good? They seem kind of slow. And this, my friends, is where it comes in handy to be skilled in the arts of the arcane. In our setups, we're going to have two turrets. Our top turret is going to be using a toss spell to toss the items from the storage container to our hotspot. Our bottom turret is going to be using our main spell. I'm using spell prisms, which let our spells continue through our box, whilst also maintaining our box. They aren't necessary, but I like to keep the box sealed shut. Also have a pulse timer as our redstone clock, and a pulse repeater, which is going to make our main turret cast slightly after our first one, as we want the items to be there before we start processing. I'm using enchanted turrets, which means we're going to need some source nearby. Then we just have an item collector filtered to collect the end product. You may want some sunglasses and possibly some earplugs for this. Behold, the true power of Ars Technica.